Okay, now what I've done is I poured water in each one of these inlet and outlet ports, in the exhaust, which is this one, and in the inlet. And this way you can see if there's water dripping out of the valves, then you know that you haven't got a good seal. Now these aren't too bad, but there is they could just do a little lap. This one's number 1 and number 2 have got a slight leak in them, so it's kind of worth replacing, I think. So yeah, we'll get round to that. I think we'll do that. I've cleaning all these puppies out. Now what I'm going to do, I've got to bleed these hydraulic tappets. Now in the top of these there's a little ball bearing. Now the way that you bleed these hydraulic tappets is that you push a pin in the top, a pin in the top of this ball bearing, which sits in the top of this rocker arm. You submerge the whole assembly. You submerge it in diesel and then rock it back 4 or 5 times. Now what this does is it cleans out all the associated crap that's in the hydraulic tappet, because as you can see from the, all this kind of like brown deposits and other bits and pieces. I mean, this is actually quite clean, but the rest of the engine isn't. So I'm assuming inside these hydraulic self-adjusting tappets is a world of rubbish and crap. So to clean it out, you push it up and down, activates, and it kind of like flushes it out. So you submerge it in diesel is what you do. You get like a lunchbox and then you submerge it in diesel. Now once you've got the pin recessed and you move it up and down 4 or 5 times, you take the pin out, you take it out of the diesel, and then you try to recess it again. Now if it moves up and down, then the tappet's knackered and you've got to replace the new hydraulic tappet. If it's solid, then it's a good one. So we're hoping for solid tappets after bleeding. Okay. We've got the cylinder head dismantled. What we're doing now is we've got the valve spring compressor on the springs, and we're removing the valve stem seals because they're knackered. We've got a valve regrind kit which includes these valve seals, so that's a good thing. There's a cylinder head over there, all oiled up and dieseled. All the hydraulic tappets in order. It's quite important to keep the cylinders and the valves back in their corresponding holes for when you regrind. These aren't actually too bad, but this one, you can see there lies the problem. It hasn't been seating properly. You can see that all black around the outside, not shiny at all. So a bit of a grind with that. That should sort that out nicely. We've what I've done is I was going to take the piston rings out, but I just really cannot be bothered. And there's it looks, because there is gasket sealer on this head, it looks like the head has been off at some point, and there's no ridge on there, there's no score marks, so I'm assuming that the rings will be okay. So what I've done is I've put some diesel in there overnight. I've given it all a bit of a clean up because it was all pretty grotty, and I've put some diesel in there so it can soak down into the compression rings, and that will just free up any gunk that's in there, hopefully. Because as you would have seen earlier, I replaced that timing chain, which was a mission. I mean, it wouldn't be too much of a mission to get the timing cover off, which I might have to anyway. But yeah, you can see everything's nice and clean now, which is what we're after. The $500 car is almost clean. Then Okay, now I messed up by not torquing the inlet manifold down properly, and I destroyed the gasket and warped the manifold as well, which was annoying. So I had to take it to my mate William Pendlebury, and he put a new face on that, straightened it all up with a hammer and a file and some sandpaper with a block, and it's come up flat. Now I've put the gasket sealer on there sparingly. I've got a new gasket in there, as you can see, and I've given the head, the rocker cover and the heat shield a fancy grey paint job, which gives the illusion of me knowing what I'm doing. Illusion, that is. There was at some point there'd been brake fluid leaking. It's not leaking now, but it had been leaking before, and it peeled the paint off down there on that cross member. So I've painted that, which smartens it up a bit, and because it's got to go in for a roadworthy, I'm sure they'd probably pick up on that being a structural member with potential rust problems. So we've got on top of that. So yeah, so now I'm going to reassemble all of this intake manifold, carburation, fuel injection system, and heater pipes and coolant pipes, and we'll see how we go. And there's a nice new starter motor sitting in there, ready to go. Now I've also replaced the heater inlet adaptation plate that goes on, where it goes on there, look, it goes in here. This is a good thing to check if you've got one of these old Magnas, because the pipe that comes out of here sits below the thermostat. This runs to the heater. Now we found that badly corroded, but quite sneakily, because it's out of view, it's just corroded just where the Jubilee clips go on, just like the thermostat housing was. So you might want to, when you replace the thermostat housing, you might want to replace that as well. It's a cheap part from Mitsubishi, and it's I think it's called an inlet manifold to heater adapter pipe. So yeah, it's definitely worth replacing because it's a cheap part. Whilst I'm here, I'll probably check that heater as well, make sure that's not all corroded in. And I've managed to bash around the bloody air conditioning unit. This is the problem. This bloody air conditioning pipe here. This gets in the way and stops this sitting on properly. When you do up these bolts, make sure you nip each one of them bit by bit, just like you were torquing down a head, because it warps very, very easily. And then just nip it up to the torque specifications. Okay, give you an update in a moment. Okay, well, the mechanical work's almost finished apart from the rear main seal on the engine, and I think we can safely say that I'm going to have a very good, reliable car after all this. You know, it hasn't been cheap, but at the same time it's been a lot cheaper than going and buying a $1,500 car that will break down and I'll need the bits on it. But it was drawn to my attention that there's probably quite a few people that wouldn't really be that happy with me driving around in a $500 car, no matter how reliable it might be. And I don't know how many other people might have a key to this car, previous owners, and it's not really super high security. So what I've done is I've replaced the front door locks with the rear door locks, as you can see, and that on the roof up there is an alarm that I can rig up to the central locking of this car, and I can have keyless entry with no locks, so any would-be tamperer that might have a key would be thwarted. So yeah, off you go. So that's a little trick for you, well worth knowing. Okay, well, I think that's it, finished. It's all ready for roadworthy now. You can see we've given it a bloody good clean since we've been doing it. think this is one of the most important things, is that every time you take something off or repair it, you clean everything that's around and the engine. As you can see, we've got a nice new set of leads and plugs in there. We've got some spanky new injectors in there as well. They've got a multi-point spray system rather than just the little needle jet. It makes the engine run a little bit smoother and a bit more fuel economy. Okay, so what have we done? We've replaced those chains, the timing chain and the balance chain. We did that, that was the first thing we did. We've replaced the head gasket, the valve stem seals, and we reground the valves. We've put a new rocker cover gasket in there because that came with the kit, as did the rubber seals on those bolts up there. We've got new Jubilee clips on all the fittings and replaced some pipes, the vacuum pipes. It's very important that if the vacuum pipes have got a hole in, or if they're not connected, the engine will run like shit. So that's good. Obviously we've cleaned everything. We've given the rocker cover, heat guard, an engine mount, and that bit down there that the brake fluid had been dripping on, a nice new coat of paint. We've installed an alarm system as well. Now, if you can see this down here, that there is an ISC, it's called an idle speed controller. Now this little thing here will be leaking on your car if you get this Model TR. It's got a little O-ring. It's very easy to repair this. You just get 2 screws, you undo them, 12mm, they're 12mm bolts with flathead screws on them, and then you just take the O-ring out, replace it, give it a clean, dismantle it, make sure there's no rubbish in there, put it back in again, and it will run a lot better. It's called an idle speed controller. When things like the air conditioning unit kick in, you put the headlights on or you put it into gear, the engine will need more. It will be under more demand, so the fuel will be altered, and that's what it does. It alters the fuel to give you a bit more power. Now, if it didn't have that on, the engine would stall constantly. So, if that's sucking air in, then it's not a great thing. Now we also replaced the thermostat and the thermostat housing, and underneath it there was a water pump to inlet tube, which we didn't replace, but we just brazed some new bits of brass on there, which is good. What else have we done? Now you can see down there that engine mount. I took that engine mount off, and it was all a bit kind of iffy, so I just filled it full of Sikaflex, and that seems to have done the job. I've replaced the cam seal on that side of the engine, and yesterday I took out the fuel pump out of the car and cleaned the strainer out of it, which is on the back of the fuel pump. It's a very easy job. You just got to lower the fuel pump, the fuel tank, and then you've just got some Phillips head screws, about 7 or 8 of them I think, in the back, that hold the plate from the fuel pump on. And yeah, and off you go. I've also put a cargo barrier in here, which will be good, because eventually I'll have stuff that I don't want to get hit in the back of the head with if I stack it, and a tow bar, so if I get a trailer, that'll be good. It's got the standard rims on for now. I've checked all the brake pads, they're all good. Checked all the rotors, they're all good. Yeah, it's all a good thing. As I mentioned earlier, I deleted those locks. Now I've got a keyless entry, which is a good thing. You can see the car's done 189,000, I don't know if you can see that. Which isn't too bad, but all this work I've done is kind of a must, really. Okay, let's see what it runs like. Okay. Fire straight up. It's not blowing any more smoke now, so the valve stem seals were leaking. That was quite a simple job to take the head off. If I was to do it again, I could do it very, very quickly. There she is, ticking over his factory. Nice and quiet. It's all good. Just giving the bodywork a clean, so it's you can see it's all nice and straight. Pretty good. A $500 car. I probably spent about $600 on parts on this, with all the gaskets, seals and bits and pieces. Now, I would say, I'll just turn this off so you can hear what I'm saying. If you're going to do this, and if you're going to do this to this model car, if, like me, you had limited mechanical knowledge, my first part of advice would be A, get a manual, and B, download the workshop manual. That's free on the internet, and just constantly trawl through the forums and listen, well, just read what the guys have got to say about this model on there, because it's been around for a long time and a lot of the people know what they're doing and what they're talking about, so that's great. My next part of advice would be, when you do the timing, make sure that the engine is dead on, top dead centre. Oh, I replaced that distributor cap as well, which was expensive, but if you shop around you can get a well, the whole distributor actually, because I was one tooth out on that, which I just couldn't work out why the engine wasn't running properly, so that was a mission. And also, when you put all this inlet manifold back together again, be very, very particular about the gaskets, how you torque it all up, and be very, very conscious of any kind of leaks, air leaks or oil leaks that you've got anywhere, because that will just make the engine run like a piece of shit if it's sucking any air in, or it's got a water leak, because as you can see, it's got water going into it, there's oil in there, there's air coming in, it's all going on in this thing. And like I said before, just check all these hoses, check all the electrical components everywhere, and it's all good. I'd highly recommend doing this to this car, if not for your own mechanical knowledge, then just to get a cheap car. But yeah, I hope that's been of some help to somebody, and hopefully it will help someone get on the road to some cheap motoring.